everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Sim Racing in Focus podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about sim racing, as the name suggests, and in particular the Australian iRacing scene. At least here in the beginning, that's where we'll be focusing most of our attention. I'm your host, Dean Reddit. I'm the owner of a small startup website known as simracinginfocus.blog, which is meant to be a blog-style website that brought some interesting articles on sim racing and people working in the sim racing industry. As time would have it, it's been quite difficult to churn out the standard of articles that I've wanted to. So we're deflecting here in the meantime to this podcast format, which will hopefully allow me to cover many topics quickly and also get down to doing what I really like doing best, and that's speaking with those people and networking with people within the industry. Outside of sim racing, I enjoy podcasts as well. Big community to work, so hopefully going to take a few bits and pieces of other podcasts that I listen to and put them into this show to hopefully bring you something that you can enjoy listening to. As far as the format of the podcast is concerned, we're going to be trying to keep everything within the hour. That's going to include following a few league races, covering some news topics, any dramas or any developing stories in the sim racing world, with probably a bigger focus on iRacing, as we mentioned before. And then that'll be followed by what I consider to be the main part of each episode, and that will be a interview with someone working in the community, working, racing, managing, any element like that. The first segment is meant to be done inside 15-20 minutes, so it's going to be fast paced. It's not going to be huge in-depth analysis, but it'll all build towards the people that we get to interview, and it'll all help everyone understand where those interviews are coming from. So, okay, everyone, let's start this episode how we're going to start every episode, and that's with our weekly drive-by segments. In this first part, we're going to be covering a few league races here in Australia. I've got 6 in particular that we're going to be following here in the beginning, including 4 V8 Supercar leagues, Porsche Cup League, and a GT3 league. 2 of these 6 leagues are now underway, with the first one here, V8 Veterans, has now been going for 5 rounds at the time of recording. So they're well underway. V8 Boomers, as they're affectionately known in the team that I'm involved in. I say that lovingly, knowing that I'm on the brink of perhaps signing up to this league in the next year or so. So I don't mean any offense by calling it V8 Boomers. So like I said, they're already a few rounds into the season. And they kicked off their first round at Phillip Island. And what we're going to do is we're just going to break the podium down from each round here as we work through. Try and keep it brief, because what I'm trying to aim to do here in this first episode is bring everyone up to speed, so that when we go to next week's episode, you're just going to be hearing about the current round. So this is going to be fast paced. So from round 1, reigning champion from last season is Michael Taliancic, took out the win, followed by Ken Latta and Chris Miller, both of Fishy Motorsport. Nick Taliancic completing a sort of move late last year to Altus Esports, which is, I flag that now as something that potentially down the track we can delve into and hope to speak to either Mick himself or Simon from Altus and get them on to discuss about what was a bit of a merger between 2 teams there. It's just interesting how all that goes about behind the scenes with a couple of relatively big teams, and they end up in a merger. So it'd be good to touch base with those guys in the not too distant future. So that's your podium from round 1. Moving into round 2, there's 51 laps at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. So a bit of a familiar favourite there with the V8 Supercar community. Again, it was Mike Taliancic taking out the win from Ken Latta, and Blake Delaney, also of Fishy Motorsports, in 3rd. So, the reigning champion coming out of the blocks relatively quickly again for the V8 Veterans. Round 3 moved on to is 41 laps, the Okayama International Circuit. from that race. It was Blake Delaney who took the win from Ken Latta and Brenton Nitschke from Frog Wheat Juiced Racing. So a bit of a change up. The first time we don't see Mick Taliancic on the podium in the opening 3 rounds, but once again, Ken Latta's just almost owning second place on the podium at this stage. So there's some protagonists to watch here in this league early doors, as you can see. And the reason why we're focusing on this is there is a bigger prize at the end of this season, which the top driver, I believe, in V8 Veterans gets an automatic qualification through to what is considered the premier, the top series in V8 supercars on iRacing nowadays, which is a Logitech G Pro Invitational Series. So if any of these drivers haven't qualified for that series via other means, they'll get an exemption from being the highest place finisher in this league. So there is an undercard here at play, which is why we're choosing to follow this league as one of our leagues. And so that's summary after round 3. Round 4, moving on to the Charlotte Motor Speedway. It was a returning champion. So Mr. Scotty Gamble has previously won the V8 Veterans, and he's returned after a season off, I believe. He took the win at Charlotte Motor Speedway from Darren Lobb in second, and Mick Taliancic is back on the podium there in third for round number 4. Round 5 then shot off to Watkins Glen, another popular track for the V8s on the iRacing platform, one of my personal favourites. And at Watkins Glen, it was Darren Lobb from Mick Taliancic and Dave Kirby, also Fishing Motorsports, in third. Yeah, so that's just a real quick summary of the opening 5 rounds. And what that all boils down to is Mick Taliancic is in the championship lead on 900 points, followed by Ken Latta on 884 and Blake Delaney on 807. And once again, we've got a big particular focus on the top of this championship table for that automatic qualification into the Logitech G Pro Invitational Series. So we're going to leave that V8 Veterans right there. That's just a quick summary. When we come back in next week's episode, we'll get a bit of a chance to dive into the individual races in fast-paced sort of style, and not just really talk about the podium. Moving on to our second V8 Supercar League, which is also underway. Moving on to the second series that we're choosing to follow here, and that is the East Coast V8 Supercar Series. Similar exemption format here going through this league. The V8 Vets has one automatic exemption for the highest place finisher who hasn't qualified, whereas East Coast V8 Series is, it has 2 exemption tickets. So the 2 highest placed drivers at the end of the season will get that ticket onto the Logitech G Pro Invitational Series. And we'll get a little bit more chance down the track to flesh out what this all means. But for the meantime, it's something to watch with these results as they come through. So round 1 of the East Coast, they're not been going as long as the V8 Veterans. As the name suggests, the V8 Veterans as well, by the way, it is an age-restricted series. So I believe it's over 40. If it's not over 40, I should be racing in it because I'm nearly 40. But the East Coast is open to everybody. So they're the little differences between the 2 series. East Coast has just been going for 2 weeks at the time of this recording. In the first week, we had they visited Charlotte Roval as well. It was quite a dominant display, really, from, I guess, the new team within the last 12 months, known as Lob Esport. James Scott and Dylan Ryan basically curb stomped everybody, barring a safety car towards the end of the race, which tightened the field back up. Did it quite easily. and I believe Shawn McNamara from 9ine5ive SimSport, who rounded out the podium from round one. In race number 2 of the East Coast V8 series, they also went to Watkins Glen, where they had a sprint format, so 2 races on the night. Little bit of a familiar story from round one with Lobs Esports' James Scott taking out the race win in the first race, followed by Synergy Sim Racing's Tom Freer, closely followed by Dylan Rudd. Both those guys shared a pretty memorable last lap exchange. Tom getting the win in that race. The second race was a bit of a reverse grid. I think it was about top 16 cars, something like that got reversed. However, didn't make a whole lot of difference really with James Scott coming through and taking the win as well in that race. Followed by 9ine5ive SimSports' Dylan O'Shea and Fisher Motorsports' Thomas Freeman rounding out the podium. So we'll look to get some championship standings updated from that league. Not quite seeing anything on their Facebook page about where the standings are, but it's quite clear that James Scott would be leading that one. With probably a pretty close run, second place, third place. So those exemptions are going to be wide open there. I believe the East Coast might be a 7-round series this season, so a shortened one. So not a series that you can afford to fall behind in early if you're looking to get into that automatic qualification spot. The other 2 leagues that we're following that are now active, we will also look to follow the V8 Supercar Online Premier Series under new ownership. Australian online gaming community now taking ownership of them, so it'll be interesting to see how that league goes. Has been a long standing Premier League for supercars in Australia until Logitech G Invitational Series has just come on board. We'll also follow the Australian Online Gaming Porsche Cup Series, which is their flag. Up until this year, that's been their flagship series. Devilled in it briefly. Really well run series. Some excellent racing. A very popular car nowadays on iRacing as well, the Porsche Super Cup, or the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. I think I got that right. That's had a lot to do with it. So interesting to follow that league, see how that goes. Try and look bigger picture with that league as well. Obviously, when the when PESC, as it's known in short, that the worldwide series with the main prize pools comes online, we'll try and track the Aussies, see how they're going in that series. It's a series that Australia has done amazingly well at through its first 5 or 6 seasons. So worth keeping an eye on that. Some names that have been around for certainly in the 6 years that I've been on iRacing have always been at the top, and we'll see how they're tracking. And we'll also follow the Premier Endurance League GT3 Championship. So just a league that's been building from what was a bit of a development league up into now probably one of the strongest GT3 leagues in terms of participation in Australia that's ongoing. And we'll get a few different names, opportunity to hear a few different names. And that league is run monthly, 2-hour endurance races. So we'll get a whole different picture there, or a different type of racing in general, rather than these weekly formats or shorter formats or closer between races. And hopefully we'll get to meet a few people behind each of these leagues. So it'll be nice to follow along. You'll hear names, then you'll hopefully hear those voices behind those names. And moving into our next drive-by segment, we're going to look at just 1 or 2 news topics that have come out in these opening. It's now iRacing Week 6 of Season 1 2024. So a few of the main breaking stories that have come out in this first 6 weeks of the new season. I think possibly one that's been long standing now is that of I guess the failings of motorsport games to really deliver on the licenses that they come out and purchased. and certainly some which they did purchase and outbid iRacing to get, namely IndyCar. They briefly held NASCAR licenses, both of which iRacing have managed to reclaim. It's been a rocky road, to put it kindly, for motorsport games. They had all these large ascendancy with these license gatherings, including Le Mans 24-hour race, which most iRacers would know. iRacing can't essentially host that event now, and label it as its namesake should be. And that's because motorsport games and rFactor 2 hold that license. The turning point, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, that come when motorsport games held that Le Mans 24 hours rFactor 2 event midway through, probably midway through last year. It had the whole who's who the sim racing world, including Max Verstappen, come on and participate in that event, only for it to just fail spectacularly, and resulting in Verstappen coming out and telling everyone not to purchase rFactor 2, which has just got to be, a gut-wrenching, but also, as you can imagine, took a big toll. And subsequently, a lot of the share prices and everything in the company's dropped. And now that just as a layman observer, looks like the tipping point that's basically undone all of that ascendancy that was coming with this company late 2022, early 2023. Certainly IndyCar and NASCAR are the only licenses that we've seen them have to give up. There's a British touring car license that's also been torn up now as well. So it's not looking good for motorsport games, but they have announced now that they will be launching their Le Mans titled game in February. They've released a trailer that basically shows about half a lap of the Toyota around Le Mans. Looks all right, sounds all right, but it's hard to put any faith, in my opinion, in something that has had so much turmoil. I know there was definitely a division out here in Australia of motorsport games that was working on one of the licensed games that's since been liquidated, dissolved, taken over by someone else. It's so hard to have any faith in that product now that's coming out. But hopefully for the sim racing world, it turns out to be something that's a serviceable product, especially for any sort of WEC fans out there. So that's basically my short-sighted opinion on the whole process, or what has been the biggest sort of news topic, I think, of 2024 so far. There is more, but we might cover some more in next week's episode. Right, well, that's enough from me. This is the design of the podcast. It's meant to be short. It's meant to be sharp here at the beginning before we get into some more in-depth conversation with the person that we're looking to speak to on the show. Tonight we're going to have a conversation with Shawn McNamara from 9ine5ive SimSport about his team's rapid rise through iRacing, from being a group of mates in the beginning right the way through to now what he considers, and quite frankly I do as well, one of Australia's top 4 sim racing teams. Whilst I might be a bit rusty on my podcasting technique, I assure you Shawn is sensational. So please tune in, enjoy, grab a coffee, a beer, as I did when I got to sit back and listen to Shawn, because it's definitely inspiring to listen to him talk. So I hope you can sit back and enjoy this conversation. All right, g'day, Shawn. How you doing? Welcome to Sim Racing in Focus podcast, mate. How have you been?
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Good, mate. Good. So,
I'll
enjoying the Brisbane weather. But no, going good.
no, that's awesome. I actually thought you were WA, so it
Ah,
makes sense. That's why I kept sending everything to you in Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. I don't know what that was and why I thought
well,
that, but
it did make sense given we're an hour behind. But no, mate. East Coast boy.
yeah.
East Coast boy.
Okay, so you're not too out of sync then. Coming on at
No,
this time at night. Well, that's a
nope.
relief.
It is
That's
good.
awesome. Yeah, mate. Look, we're just basically what I'm up to is we're doing a bit of a podcast show where we try and each week speak with someone in the community. That's what I like to sort of do is get in and about and see not just sort of guys like yourself who are driving and team owners, but sort of league admin and even people working in the industry as far as
Yep.
hardware reps. So just get in and have a chance to have a bit of a chat with you and get your unique sort of experience with sim racing, which has been a pretty big hobby of mine. So we go back quite a few years now, I suppose. It's
Yeah,
probably
we do.
2 or 3 years.
Yeah, at least maybe even a little bit longer, I guess, in a racing sense. But obviously the admin stuff for a bit there as well. But yeah, be a good few years, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think what particularly interests me with your story is the way that I guess 9ine5ive SimSports have had a very sort of, well, at least in my opinion, a quick rise to up through the sim racing ranks. And I can remember a little bit about when you first come onto the scene and then where it is now. It's been a really rapid rise for you guys.
Yeah, it's been a big couple of years, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, let's start right back at the beginning then, and let's talk a little bit first about yourself and what got you started, and then what possessed you to basically start up a sim racing team, which is, hopefully people tuning into
Crazy.
this podcast, yeah, you know, might be interested in picking up a few tidbits from you, and yeah, it would be a pretty good blueprint to follow for the little I do know about 9ine5ive SimSport. It seems like a good blueprint to follow. So yeah, talk a little bit
Yeah.
about how you got into it, and then yeah, what possessed you to invest in the time sieve that is team management.
Yeah, we'll go down the inspirational path then. But yeah, no, look, I started sim racing probably 12, 13 years ago, but really didn't take it seriously. I was just in it whilst I was racing go karts. So I was competitive in go karts and just wanted something to keep me a little bit sharp and whatnot when I wasn't at the track. And sort of it progressed a bit. I took it a bit more seriously around probably 2017, 2018 when I stopped racing karts. And then COVID hit. And just before that, I was doing driver training and actual mechanicking at the racetrack for a lot of up and coming young drivers, sort of mentoring and trying to guide their careers a little bit whilst they were younger. And yeah, once COVID hit, that all wrapped up. So it instantly gave me a lot more time on the sim. Um, and I sort of kicked off in the OSR Dev series. Actually, it was the first time I really took anything seriously and decided to join a league, and I had some fun there. And then the RSRA thing popped up. Chad and Mitch and a few of those boys kind of knew them through go karting. And during the COVID piece, I had as I said, a tuning business. It was called 9ine5ive Tuning. So the 9ine5ive part has always been around in some way, shape, or form for probably the past 20 years. But saw an opportunity with the karting community to actually try and, I guess, because racing stopped. So COVID came about, racing stopped, and that was the end of it. And I wanted to keep all the kids active and keep them going. So I actually started a league called the IKC E Series, which is the Ipswich Car Club E Series. And that quickly took off. It absolutely exploded and created some really good friendships out of that. And that's how the RSA thing came about. And yeah, basically did 2 rounds there. And myself, Chad, Mitch, Benny Siren, they all sort of said, "Oh, we'll come and race for you. So that's kind of how 9ine5ive was born. I really didn't have any aspirations to start a race team. It was I always looked up to the the TTRs, and back then you had United SimSports and all those sorts of people, and I was like, oh wow, that'd be amazing to drive for these guys one day. But yeah, so that's how 9ine5ive came about. It was really just a few mates got together and said, yeah, bugger it, let's do it. And yeah,
and was that Ipswich Kart Club?
It was
the track that you were doing the teaching at? Yeah, because that's interesting. Because my sort of earliest memories, I think, was basically you and Simon Chadwick jumping on stream, and I think it was the season before. Potentially, I got tangled up with Real Sim Racing Australia, or RSRA as we know it, and you guys were sort of dual streaming and kind of just dominating that league. So you knew Simon obviously outside of sim racing, and also Ben Siron, and so they sort of formed the nucleus of your team, did they?
Well, correct. Yeah, I mean Chadwick raced go karts as well. So I didn't integrate with him much at the track because we were in separate classes. But I knew of him and that little group of people.
He was in the lower class, right? Was he lower class than you? Yeah.
He was in the restricted karts. He was the slow boys. But yeah, and then when I did the IKC E-Series thing, he actually helped out and did some race control for us in that because 50 young hot-headed kids on track in a sim needs an adult to keep them under control. So so he sort of, we formed the relationship through that. And then he was the one that actually said to me, why don't you come and race in the RSRA league? And then, the rest is and Benny and Chad, I believe they went to primary school together or something like that. They've been friends for a very, very long time. So, that's where it all really kicked off.
Okay, so you were sort of thrust into it, really, and then so did you? At that point, and you guys were just as far as goals and things were concerned for the team in that sort of very first year. So give us a rough timeline. Were we looking at about 2017, 18? Did you say that this
that would have been 20? I think 2020 is when...
So a bit later again.
Say 1920, would have been the RSRA piece. And I think up until that point, I was just content jumping in, practicing, having some fun. And then, I dipped my toes into the RSRA, and I think first round out, I won. And the first year, I think I won the championship in that. And that was probably the worst thing that could happen to me because it lit a fire, and I sort of said, well, we could do something with this. Or, I just got that competitive edge back that I had when I was racing real stuff. So that's when really a couple of months after the team kicked off, that I think it was early 2000. That's when I sort of started to think, well, we could probably do something with this, and let's knuckle down and see how it goes.
It's interesting you mentioned that it sort of sparked your competitiveness, which I think is basically the one thing that makes iRacing what it is. It seems to walk this fine line between what can be sort of considered a recreation or enjoyment as a game, but also then it does really speak. If you have a competitive side, it'll latch onto that. And for me, I played a lot of cricket growing up. I was competitive in that front, and then kids come along. I lost that competition, and then iRacing was basically my substitute for it. So it's interesting to hear you mention that, because I can definitely relate to that as far as a way that it draws you in. So it does 100%. A great job. It does a great job.
Definitely, and that's what it's. We're all, everyone that's a part of it either loves motorsport or just loves sport. And if you're anything to do with sport, you've got that edge. You can be there for a bit of fun, but ultimately you want a little bit of success along the way. It's good.
Yeah. And that, I think it's one thing that'll probably pop up again later in the conversation, because when it comes to, I guess, managing people, you might have found similar experiences in your team. People have different levels of competitiveness. So it can be, dealing with people within your team, especially, we'll find out a little bit more about 9ine5ive, but the size of the team that you guys have now, I'm sure there's a range of guys there that have different levels.
Definitely.
Yeah, but so I guess we're just walking through now. This first year, you guys got drawn into the real sim racing and formed a bit of a nucleus in that first season. I remember you distinctly driving a Mustang back then, if memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, that would be correct.
How's the race wins going now, mate? Is it still comparable, or was it better back then?
Yeah, well, I'm switching back to a Mustang this year, so that might tell you
Oh, you
something.
know, there you go.
Definitely, definitely.
Oh, great. Well, so after that first season, is that when you started moving into potentially like attracting sponsors to the team, or you go again with maybe focusing on building the team out at that stage? I know that you guys have a pretty long-standing affiliation with racecraft simulation. So
Yeah.
how did that all come about?
Look, people that helped out early on with the team, whether it would be a livery or whatever, or just I'm loyal to people that show respect and have a strong work ethic and customer service ethic. And racecraft, when I bought my first proper rig, up until I think the back end of 2020, I was racing under a coffee table. So it was pretty basic gear. And when I reached out to John, there was no alliance or no deal in place then. He was just an amazing bloke to deal with and an amazing company to deal with. And that's not a plug in any way, I guess. But I wanted to, in the early days, we weren't sponsored by him, but I wanted to represent his brand because that was who the type of company and the type of person that I wanted the team to be affiliated with, is someone with that respect level. And that's really, where a lot of our now sponsors are. Ross from RSW Graphics, he's been a part of the team for 2 years now, 2.5 years, doing all our liveries and supporting and all that, and along with his new business venture with 9ine5ive Apparel as well. But that's how all of those relationships have come about. Is really first off, I've spent some money with them, and then just cracking relationships, and then that's just built along the journey, and they're still a part of it now, and hopefully, into 2025, they'll still be a part of it then.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point because there's several ways to go about if you did want to attract sponsors or
Yeah,
affiliates with your team, isn't there? So I guess what I can take from that is being willing to reach out and do essentially something for them for nothing in the beginning, and trying to build on it from there is an interesting way to go about it.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned Ross as well. Like I've had a little bit of dealings with Ross up until this point, so he's someone that I'd love to get on and have a chat to as well. So he's
Yeah,
obviously
he's a good
banging out.
talker.
He's
He
he's
won't, he
lovely.
won't,
He's
yeah, he won't
lovely.
stop talking. But
That's what we want. That's what I want. I would start a podcast to not talk. That's the whole point. Like, yeah. But he's definitely someone. So he is, not to deviate too much, but obviously creating your liveries for you. He's been going with you guys for I can at least think of 3 or 4 iterations of
yeah,
liveries that you guys have had with him. So yeah, again, Racecraft and Ross, when I sort of think of 9ine5ive SimSport, they're two companies that I know that are on your car straight away.
yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. And Ross always, I think his running joke is that he doesn't get enough creative freedom with my liveries. But
Oh really?
it's,
So you run a tight
yeah, I'm quite OCD-ish about. You can ask if you ever get one of the boys on from the team. You can ask them about wheel colours. But yeah, I'm quite OCD-ish about
I can
the look.
understand that. I can
Yeah,
understand that.
so
I'm on board with that actually. No,
that's why
you
this
can.
year's livery is certainly yeah, I'm excited about it, and it's really Ross's baby, this one. So yeah, pretty stoked with it.
And you talk about now that they've gone from really affiliates into sponsors.
Mm.
How's that pressure ramped up on you in terms of, do you need to fulfill things for them now? Do you have certain targets, or whether it's social media or broadcast races or anything like that, that you feel like you need to, or you've agreed with them that you need to be a part of?
Oh, look, certainly. I mean, there's unspoken. There's nothing officially locked in place around performance and so forth. But the conversations I have with John and with Ross, it's really about I want to promote them as best as I can, and that's what I'll ask every few months: is are we doing enough for you?
Yep.
It's not about that. That's the reality. Is they're a customer effectively, and as a team and as a bunch of drivers for a team, we need to represent those brands appropriately. And if we're not producing enough media and enough, sharing their stuff or tagging them in bits and pieces, then we're not doing our job. So for
Yep.
me, that's what it's about, and that also helps us. There's a few other things in the fire at the moment that hopefully we can get over the line in the next few months, but. I think having those relationships in place and seeing what we do, hearing the cars on the broadcasts, and quite often they're referred to as racecraft cars, not 9ine5ive cars, and that's quite good for anything else that we're looking to do into the future as well. So yeah, it's a very important part of, I guess, the team culture, is that those names on the car actually mean something to the team, and we need to make sure that we represent them and we're giving them what they need.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think a lot of people that might be venturing into starting up their own teams are already thinking about, whether they can make sponsorship a reality. So,
Yeah,
there's obviously like a lot of things that they can be doing between essentially having a startup team and going to a sponsor and saying, can we have something in return for, so for whether it be social media posts or broadcast appearances and whatnot. You're showing value before you're asking for something in return. So
correct.
yeah, so that's very interesting. Like that, these are the type of things that I'm trying to extract out of people that come on that have done far better job than what I ever done
Well,
doing those things.
it's always interesting because it's Racecraft and Turn-In, they're and RSW, they're in the sim world. So
Yeah,
it's for anyone's looking to start a team, it's so much easier to reach out for companies that are already in the sim world.
yeah,
The hard bit is then, I guess, taking it externally and finding that corporate level where you can bring in a bigger name, or not necessarily a bigger name, but certainly outside of the sim community, a name that people know. So baby steps initially to support the brands that support you, I think, is any advice I'd give to anyone who wants to start a team up, is you've got to support the people that were there to start with. And um, if you want those sort of sponsors, then look inside of the sim community and what you can do for people.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, what about, I guess now, you yourself, you obviously have a lot of racing commitments. Part of what I'm trying to do with the show is, first half of a podcast, I'm just trying to follow a few leagues around some sort of quick fire results, and your name's always popping up in leagues like the Vets and East Coast, these leagues that have already started up for 2024.
Yeah.
So you obviously have a lot of racing commitments as well. So do you find that, do you set aside time each week that you do focus on just sort of more team management stuff, building and maintaining those relationships as well, or is it not that sort of time taxing on you?
No, look, it is. It is trying to balance. Last year, certainly, obviously we had Pro Series, and we had quite a fair few cars in the Pro Series last year. And that actually, having the team management and the driving part, certainly hurt my performance. I didn't put enough time into the driving side, and I spent too much time on the management side. Um, but I'm okay with that if it means that the rest of the team is performing. I'm happy to take, even though it's a confidence hit, I'm happy to, put the team first and make sure that that they do their thing. Whereas this year, there's been a bit of a transition in our team, and a couple of drivers have moved on, and that's kind of almost relit the fire to take the driving side a little bit more seriously. And I guess try and help and support the team from the driving side. The commercial piece kind of look after itself, and we've got a really good group of people in the team now that really need limited management. So 2024 is so far a little bit different, and kind of enjoying just getting in the seat and driving a bit more than spending a ton of time having to deal with just not that those couple of drivers took up most of my time, but as the team got a little bit smaller, it just gets a little bit easier to manage.
Yeah, we will revisit those drivers in a little while. I can assure you with that. But we're jumping ahead, so we're just moving along gradually now. So, okay, so yeah, we I guess one more point I sort of wanted to focus on having that league like Real Sim Racing Australia at the beginning. Did that sort of help when you had basically your whole team focused, dialed in on one league? That I imagine that helped in recruiting in some ways because people could identify who you were.
Yeah, definitely. RSRA, much of a shame it's not around now. It really, I guess, it really set the standard there for a good year and a half around, driver numbers and quality of drivers and all those bits and pieces. Like there was some, as the league got bigger, the driving standards and the quality of drivers really lifted. So, given that we were a team that I think out of the 5 seasons we competed, we won 3 championships in it and a couple of Bathursts and a Triple Crown and freaking all this other things. And that helped us certainly, recruit well. We recruited at the right time with a couple of guys that, again, my advice, if you see someone available, it never hurts to ask the question. And that's how we picked up a couple. It was just the right time, asked the right question. They could see the results were pretty strong with what we were doing, and bang, all of a sudden, we've got something to build on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can concur. Like, I think I've had a few conversations with a few teams that were in them, and just getting in one league and solidifying in that league, you can definitely attract guys that way. So can definitely speak to that. So early doors, you sort of looked at approaching guys individually, or you never did sort of blanket advertisements or anything like that, like from memory?
We did one. Look, we did at one point. It was a little bit further down the track, but yeah, I went from being content to wanting to really wanted to be one of the top 4 teams in Australia. So it was sort of like, yeah, this is all fun, but hang on a second, I really want to do this. And at one point we did advertise. We wanted to try and recruit, call it a senior top level driver into the team that could support with setups and things like that as well. But look, the interest out of that wasn't massive, but it was noted by people that sometimes it's not about the result, it's about the message. So dropping that note out there might not have generated a result at that point, but it certainly let people know that we were looking, and that we were serious about it. So yeah, really, it was individual taps on the shoulders got us to where we are, and but yeah, a few subtle hints here and there on social media never hurts.
So yeah, that's interesting, because I imagine it's probably a little bit different now in terms of where the team's at, and you might be looking more specifically at people now, or is that sort of how you go about it now?
Yeah, 100%. We're established now. We know that, again, not to get further down the track, but, whilst we've changed a little bit for 2024, we know that we're an established team now, and we are looked at, in my opinion. Other people might have a different opinion, but I think we are looked at one of the top 4 teams on the grid, top 4, top 5. So, yeah, I think now it's more about targeted acquisitions. Who can we get? Who would want to join? And I guess it's a tough one now because obviously there's a new team that started up, and there's a massive amount of talent that's gone to that team. And then what's left? Everyone's that great of friends inside of these teams that, A, you don't want to poach them or try and poach them, and B, people just enjoy driving with their mates. So that's now the challenge moving forward is, find the right timing to try and acquire the right drivers, which ain't easy.
Yeah, I can imagine. And yeah, look, we might circle back to this topic later on, but I for someone that's just not done a whole lot of racing in the V8 scene of late, it's also probably looking like it's diminishing the talent, like the amount of participants just in general there. So
Mm.
you guys are mainly focused on V8 supercars. I guess I'm right in saying.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Certainly, we've got a portion of a GT division there, and we would like to build that. Certainly with Mazomo in there, and Hayden Sells stepping out of the supercars, and he's going to jump into GTs, and he's both those guys are quick in GT cars and supercars for Selly as well. But yeah, so look, we're predominantly focused on supercar, but that I guess landscape is changing a bit at the moment, and a few of the boys want to go tackle GT, so it'd be interesting to see how they go this year.
Yeah. We'll come back to that topic again later as well. Just to try and keep some sort of order moving through here. I know we're chopping, changing back and forth because I'm sort of curious now. Yeah, we sort of probably covered off the first 2 or 3 years. So there was we come out of RSRA, and I imagine the Supercars Online Premier Series probably become the team's main focus at that point.
Yeah.
Is that around about the same time that you sort of had that goal that you wanted to be within in the top 4 teams in Australia?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that goal was set pretty early, and then to talk about the recruitment bit, because really that's the piece. But when we brought Ruddy on and Aaron Dodd, they both come to us from NSR, and again, Ruddy I knew from go karting, so it was a really good synergy to be able to bring him on board. And I think once we had him and Dotty on board and the pace, the best thing you can do if you want to be faster is to recruit people that are faster than you. And that's the only way that I could see, not just for myself to drag myself forward in pace, but for the entire team to have someone else to shoot for. And that's when we really, we did the last year of RSRA, and then Scops became the focus. And that's sort of when we went, you know what, we can do this. We can compete towards the front, and a lot of hard work started to go into to that whole process to try and push us as far as up the grid as we could. And Ruddy was, I'll say it multiple times in this chat that Ruddy was instrumental in where we are today. Around his work ethic, and his friendship and everything else. But he was a massive part of the success that 9ine5ive is. Just through his ability to work on sets and spend time, because that's what it's all about. You want to be competitive, you want to be at the front, you've got to put the time in the seat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from the outside looking in as well, like that's really about the point in time where the key word's probably momentum. The momentum really picked up. Like we've not just on track performances, but it seemed like every other week there was a post going up about a new driver coming to the team. And I guess that would have been the case then. You would have gone from someone that was doing the tapping on the shoulder to actually getting people come to you and say,
100%.
Is there room for me there?
Yeah, definitely. And that was it was a tough one, because you want to bring people in, and you had people that wanted to come and learn and wanted to be a part of what we were doing and all those things. And some of those decisions are good. Some of them you look back on and go, maybe it wasn't the right call. But it's certainly, it was a sliding door moment where all of a sudden we're getting messages every week saying, we want to come drive for you, we want to come drive for you. And that was a really good feeling. It was a tough one to manage, but it was a really good feeling.
Did you? You don't have to go into any particular details, but did you have to turn anyone away?
Oh, look, there was a few that we said no to, and that was purely nothing personal. It's just, I guess, you get to the point where you want to start acquiring certain types of drivers, and again, Rudd was the benchmark in the team, and you're then looking to give him a target to shoot for, because otherwise he's going to get to the point where he goes, well, shit, I'm not learning anything now. We certainly, there was some drivers that we said, look, no, sorry, even though we exploded to over 20 drivers at one point. There was a lot that we'd said no to. So it's a tough one. You don't like saying no to people, but it is what it is. They've popped up at other teams and they're doing well.
Yeah, and so I think you're just looking around, looking at posts and things in general, you see people that occasionally inquire about whether there's any spots on teams, and I think from my own personal experience back at the start, it was definitely a barrier to. You would see teams on track, and you'd think, "Oh, I'm probably not there. I won't reach out, or I won't do anything." Like,
Yeah.
and I think most teams would be very open to hearing from people if they were interested in joining them. I think most sort of like talking more generally about, I guess, mid-level teams,
Yeah.
those guys that are at there's teams that are fielding drivers that are around about the back end of a split one Scops grid or something like that, really looking to push forward still and got available spaces. So, definitely would encourage people reaching out.
Definitely.
As a way to really, you can fast track it by doing that, not just waiting to hear from people to advertise and what they're looking at doing. But we both went a different direction when we just started our own team. But you've gone on to great things. But yeah, I guess we talked a bit about how you sort of swelled. Now you've just mentioned before that you got up to around about 20 drivers.
Yeah.
Yep. So that would have been, and you touched on it briefly already about how someone like Dylan can come into the team, really push the team forward, not just sort of with what he was doing on track, but bringing other people up to his level. You get 20 people in there. Your I guess decisions as a team manager now are looking at both ends of the talent scale and going, what can I do for the driver that's down the bottom end of the talent scale, and what could I
Yeah.
do to help retain the driver at the top end of the talent scale? How
Yeah.
did you do much thinking about that? Was that something that was sort of conscious on your mind?
Big time. Big time. Yeah. I put in place, incentive programs and little bonuses and, different bits and pieces to reward people for participation, because that's the biggest thing. Is the more time you're in the seat, the better you're going to be. And everyone's, me included, a very busy job, and it's very hard for people sometimes to find the time to do it. But the people that we had, whether it's a ruddy or down the bottom end of the pay scale, you've got to incentivize people to want to do something, and that's what we did for a while. Was I put a bit of a dollar incentive thing in place, that if you got a podium here, or if you did that, or you did this, then there'd be a little reward for that. And then we wanted to look at our team I-rating average, not just individual I-rating averages, to try and get everyone active in officials and get people moving. And that works for some people, and other people it's good for a few weeks, and then it drops off in bits and pieces. But you find out very quickly who really wants to put the effort in. And that's sort of where you then lie your focus moving forward. Is it's not about the guys that don't want to put the effort in. They're still there and they're still a part of what you do. But I'm not going to spend my time and energy trying to get those guys going harder and harder when I know I've got 60% of the boys that are fully focused and want to get into it. So it's a fine line, because you don't want to exclude or not include people, and but people live their lives and do things how they do it, and that's ultimately where we got to. Was we swelled, and it became a bit of a challenge, and we've
I guess you're similar to myself, where you don't mind putting those incentive things in place. You're actually happy to see someone take up the challenge, and it wouldn't even matter if that person was on the lower end of the talent scale, because if you're going to put something up and people buy into it, I think that's almost the whole hurdle right there. You just got to get that buy-in from people, and
definitely.
Some people just I find iRacing very hard to just be an escape from pressure. It is whatever you put on yourself, I know, at the end of the day. But I would turn to other games or sims as my sort of relaxing time. But some people do treat it that way. But I can see and appreciate what you're saying, where and you don't mind that coming to as a cost to yourself, I suppose, as long as you're seeing that sort of buy-in from the people. That's what, as a team manager, I think the overall success is what you're doing it for, and
100%.
The the cost along at the end of the way, along the way, is you can write it off in your own hand as being justifiable. You won't get it. You won't be able to convince anyone else outside of sim racing that it's justifiable, but you can have that definitely in your own.
Blow more on a Thursday night at the pub, but but yeah, definitely. No, it is good. You see, it's great when you see a bloke who runs mid pack all of a sudden is cracking a top 10. And just to put a name like Craig Schulz is a great example of a guy that when he came to the team, he had an okay pace. He was Mr. Consistent and he was far too polite to people. Simple as that. But he bought into what we're doing, and he's consistently now cracking on the door of the top 10, and his aggression's up, and his race pace is more consistent. They're the good news stories that those little programs, I guess, help with, is that it's not about the Ruddies and the Griffins and the O'Sheas of the world and whatnot. For me, it's about seeing the progression of all those other guys that are aspiring to go quicker and genuinely want to get in the seat and go quicker. That's the cool bit for me.
Yeah, I can appreciate that for sure. You touched on Griffin there, Johnny. That he's probably one of the more recent guys to come in, but you probably ticked a big goal off on the list last year when Griffin was able to take out the Supercars Online Premier Series. So that must have been a pretty good feeling.
Massive, yeah. That was, it was. Again, you go back a few years and you're trying to qualify for Scops, and you're lucky if you crack top split, and then all of a sudden we started cracking top split, and we're like, righto, we won a championship. And I think it was the start of 22. I put up a post, the Wall of Champions at Montreal, and it was about the championship starts here. And 12 months later, it started again, and we had Griffin on board, and he's such a he's such a professional in a sim sense, and outside that we've become very good friends as well. But he was a great acquisition, and again, it was an opportunistic one where his previous team kind of dissolved, and I didn't sit on my hands waiting for an opportunity. I just jumped out and said to him, "Well, do you want a spot?" And he had a choice of a few different teams, and he picked 9ine5ive because he believes in what we're doing, and he could see what we were trying to build. We weren't a team of, call it superstars. We were a team of just good blokes who were chipping the right way. And for him to pick up that championship last year, he cared so much about it, almost more so to win it for me than win it for himself. If he'd have a bad round, he'd message me and goes, "I feel like I've let you down." And bullshit. He freaking absolutely. He's so committed to the team and so committed to what we do. And to see him win that last year, and he's tried a few years before, and he's just come up short. But to see him get that was it was a big tick for him, and for me, it was validation for him just to show who Griffin Gardner is in the sim world. He's no slouch, and he's the real deal.
Yeah, because I think I've been around iRacing now for probably about 6 years, and even going right back to the start, I think I'm right in saying I can remember Griffin popping up here and there. He was sort of, looking at Scops or something, he was always talked about, as someone that had potential. And he would sort of deliver these lightning rod performances where, one every 5 rounds, he would just be somewhere where no one expected him to be in terms of battling in the top 5 or whatever, but then other weeks he could be down in the 20s, so 20s, 30s, etc. He never seemed to be affiliated with an Aussie team, or I think I'm right in saying that Vanderbilt might have been an overseas team, but
Vanderbilt were overseas,
and he was obviously tied up with other categories as well, not just the supercar. But it was a name that I seem to recall. I've known of for a long time, but you didn't really get to see him or become familiar with him until he joined 9ine5ive last season, and he was just an ever-present fixture. Yeah. So that's obviously, I would attribute that in part to the environment that he's sort of moved into.
Yeah, and I think him and again Ruddy, but myself and O'Shea and Ratu as well. he's worked so well with us all, and given he is a Perth boy, so he is on the wrong side. But the time difference makes it a bit clunky from that point of view sometimes. But yeah, he'll still turn up and still be thereabouts where we need to be to all get together and get on with it. And his maturity, I think, it's funny you talk about. He'd have races where he's battling the top 5 for a win, and other races where he's down in P20. And I think last year, I think the turning point for him was just his consistency and maturity in driving. He was content to go, what, I could probably make this move, but I'm just going to consolidate here and finish P2 or finish P3. And I think that was, seeing what he had done previously into last year. I think that was the biggest turning point. And he's just, such a quality guy, just a great driver. So we'll see what 2024 brings for him.
Oh, that's good to hear. He's not particularly old.
Mate, no,
he's side, isn't he? Yeah.
He's only 73. No, he's 2021. You'll probably shoot me if I got that wrong, but yeah, 73. Well, he's been in the sim world for that long, so it's like dog years.
He has, yeah. He hasn't even got into sim debt yet.
Exactly.
No, so he could be potentially we look at him, someone that had some great success last year. I'm sure he's going to attract interest as well. But we have that sort of success story of last year there, and then you mentioned it before, but the start of this year, Ruddy moves on. Did Rick Kuznetsov also move on?
Yeah, Rick moved as well. Yeah.
So how does was that something you knew was boiling away in the background, or did that sort of take you by surprise? And how did you sort of feel about that?
I was pretty emotional about the Ruddy one, to be honest with you. And not in a bad way. Look, Rud's got a few really good mates in the sim world, and James is one of those. And it's always been, I guess, it's always been a close point of at some point he'll go drive with James, and you can't deny that. And the way that Ruddy did it, and it was ultra professional, and I can't fault him and James and all those guys enough for the way they did it. We all talked about it openly and respectfully. There was no bad blood about it, and I wish him and all those new guys, so to speak, all the best this year. But it was outside of the fact that he was so quick in the team, and he did a lot for us from setup point of view. As I said to him, and I've said to the guys in the team as well, it's actually more about just not having him a part of the friendship group, so to speak, day to day. That's the bigger bit for me is not having him in the chats and things like that. It sounds like we've broken up, but that's sort of what it is. But it's great. He jumps in the Discords with the boys still, and we do officials together and have a laugh and a joke and whatnot. So he's got a great opportunity. And look, the Rick one, that one was probably a little bit of a tougher one, only because it sort of sprung up last minute, and that's not a shot at Rick. It was. There was no real notice on it. It happened pretty quickly, but Rick wanted an opportunity to go and do some GT stuff, and we're not a team that's really geared up for that at the moment as much as we want to be. So he had a great opportunity to go do that, and he'll still pop up in the supercar land. But his focus for 2024 is he wants to get into Porsche Cup, the PESC series, all that sort of stuff. So that's where he needs to be to achieve that for himself. And again, wish him nothing but the best. But if they're listening, if you both want to come back at any point, go for it. It was a tough one. Yeah, it was a tough one, but it is what it is. You move on, and we've got a cracking lineup outside of that. So we'll build on that for 2024.
Yeah, because that, I think, the first thought, it's like the team has been on such a meteoric rise that this might be the first time that forward momentum in terms of on track results goes might halt for a little while. But people coming and going, it's all part of team management, and there's, like you said, we blur the lines, I think, in sim racing between friendship and having a good time, and also that more serious side, and being able to be professional in those situations is obviously it's going to leave that door open for if they do want to come back, that you as the manager got to make sure you don't burn that bridge down.
You're 100%, and same as the driver. You're going to come across. If people aren't happy, then they need to voice it and they need to talk about it properly. And I like to think that that's what we do most of the time. And you're always going to get some that don't, and those bridges do get burnt and they won't come back. But that's what, again, the guys that we've got certainly at the moment are ultra professional, and no bridges burnt in these departures. And who knows? Wait and see what happens in the future.
Absolutely. Well, I've got you now for 45 minutes, and I said I would have you for 45, so you're free to leave at any time. But
mate, we're only halfway there, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, I might have to make this 2 parts. I'm trying to get away from the whole have a 2-hour podcast to digest. It's not. Yeah. I'm only just trying to keep this within an hour, but
easy.
It may be. It may be a long time before we get to catch up again. So I'll edit it down if we need be. But I've still got more things to keep going on with if you're happy to stick around.
Yeah, let's rock. Let's do it.
Yeah, we can sort of come, I guess, more to the now situation.
Yeah, 100%. So
I noticed that the pre-quali for the Logitech G Invitational Series had wrapped up last week.
Yep.
And you managed to get through give us first of all just a little bit of an explanation about how that pre-quali works, and then where you managed to come through in those results last week.
So obviously, if you talk about the actual series, so the top 20 from the championship automatically qualify to compete the next year. So the top 20 are locked away, obviously, and then there's a pre-qualifying series where anyone can sign up to. Basically, it's a 2-track qualifying session or series, so to speak. Post your best times. It's similar to the old Scops format where it's 6-hour servers get into it. And then you combine time from, I think, what was it, Winton and Phillip Island. You combine time with them, put you in sequence, and the top 45 from that go through to the 4-round qualifying series. Which kicks off at the start of February. So that'll be 45 cars in that. And then the top 20 from that go through or receive an invitation, I should say, not to go through, receive an invitation to go into the official Logitech G Pro Invitational Series. Kicking off in March, so it's quite a process. So it's the entire month of February. I think there's one Wednesday off, but we've got myself in there, Griffin's in there, Craig qualified for it. Obviously O'Shea is already qualified because he finished P11 last year in the championship for that. So he's already through, and then that's it. The rest of the boys are. Brad's sitting it out with work commitments this year, but he'll be a cracking co-driver at the back end of the year. And then we've got Bilson. Cam Jones is still a chance. Obviously, there's a golden ticket process as well. So East Coast and V8 Vets. So the top 2, I shouldn't say the top 2, the highest 2 in the championship for East Coast that aren't already in Pro Series receive a golden ticket in. So I've currently got the top ticket for that locked away at the moment. Still a few rounds to go, and then same for vets. There's 1 ticket available. I think it is for vets as well. So for the championship winner there. So it's quite an interesting process. So it should be good. Yeah,
that's it. It's I'm going to put you in the hot seat here, actually. Mm-hmm. Where are we looking at Logitech G now on the overall landscape? So I think down the track, a guy that I would absolutely love to have a chat with is Jordan Ross, who's obviously tied up pretty well there with Logitech, and we've got a bit of a changing what's the word I'm looking for, structure in V8 supercars where we've seen a change of ownership with the Supercars Online Premier Series.
Yeah.
Logitech G's on the rise, but it's not necessarily available to everyone. So I think, down the track, obviously, I'd love to get Jordan and we sort of chat through about the V8 supercar landscape and where a good
Yeah.
point to get on it as far as a development standpoint goes, and then where you're sort of aspiring to be to. That's a long-winded way of saying, are we regarding Logitech G now as the premier
Yeah.
supercar
Absolutely.
series? Yeah, no
Absolutely.
doubt.
Yeah, and it's only going to get stronger and stronger from a competition point of view. It is, and I am fortunate enough for actually, I do work with Jordan and Brenton on an admin side for Pro Series, but it is ultra professional. You talk about social media content, website content, the amount of work that goes in behind the scenes for it. The quality of drivers, the caliber of drivers is just next level. And this season, will be the first season was like, you could qualify top 20 comfortably if you played it smart. Last year was you have a bad round, hope. This year, it could be anything. The names that are in the qualifying series, the top 15 or 20 there are strong enough to win races in Pro Series. So I think it is definitely the benchmark now in Australian supercar racing, sim racing. That is absolutely for sure.
Yeah, it gives me the impression that in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to be talking about who's not racing in this
Yes.
series as a
Yeah.
major talking point. By the process of elimination from the qualifying series. So yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, Brenton and Jordan are really taken a great product that the Supercars Online Premier Series had had for a long time, and again moving it now further towards that professional standard, where there's bigger things at stake. There's bigger things probably I'm right in saying to be able to participate. There's bigger things that you need to stump up, and then obviously bigger prizes as well at the end of it.
Yeah, it's definitely Scops was such a great, and not just Scops, by the way, OSR devs. That whole progress through the dev series into Scops into Top Split. That was such a great format for so long. And I mean, I'll let Brenton and Jordan chat about it if you ever get them on. But what they've done with it is they really wanted to take that product and take it to another level. And I think they've done that absolutely tenfold. They've done an amazing job with it.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely put the feelers out, and hopefully they can come in, and we definitely have a good, really dissect it with them. So you mentioned you got about 5 guys moving through that process now, either qualified already or moving through it, and then is it then we're kind of in a period where we're going to have to wait and see with Scops. I've participated in the Australian Online Gaming Porsche Cup Series. The people that have now taken over there at the Supercars Online Premier Series, they run a really good show, so I'm sure it'll be really good. Is it a case now that those guys that miss out on that Logitech G now focus will go back to Scops as really their sort of fallback series? Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And to be honest, I think even those of us that do make it into pro, from a team point of view, will still represent in Scops. I think this year, hopefully that change, a little bit of a difference to it might bring back a couple of teams, and the competition will be there, at another level again. But we'll still venture into Scops. There's no doubt about it, and East Coast obviously weekly we're heavily committed to as well. So that's certainly the plan this year for sure.
All right. Well, I think that's about everything that I've got. But mate, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on. It's been just really cool just to sit back and listen to you talk. I've had a really good time. So hopefully you've enjoyed it, and I think we can sort of wrap it up at this point. And mate, I hope at some chance at some stage we can do it all again.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Thanks for having me on, and definitely do it again. Maybe when we win another couple of championships.
Once the landscape changes again, we'll find out what your goals are changed to, and I'm sure, hopefully the team's not going anywhere soon, and it's a great success story. I think 9ine5ive SimSport. One of the best things I think that you guys have managed to do there is the way that it would at least appear to outside people that people just actually wanted to go there and drive. Like
Yeah.
that really must be something you guys must be proud of. And is there anyone else helping you? One more thing, I'll chuck this in. Is there anyone else really helping you? Or is this something that you sort of tackle by yourself?
Oh, look,
Obviously,
no,
there's.
yeah, we started. Well, I started mid last year. It got a bit chaotic, so we started up with an admin group. So Griffin supports there, Craig supports, and Chadwick throws a bit of support there as well. And that was really just put in place so that we could bounce ideas off each other. So it's not just the bloke wearing the 951 always telling people how it is, because that's not that's not really fair on me or anyone else. So no, look, Griffin, Griff's been a great help, just bouncing stuff off, and Craig and Chad as well. But all the boys do something in some way, shape, or form. So do appreciate the guys and all the support that they equally give me.
Yeah, that's probably a fair thing to end on. Is that we've mentioned at length racecraft and RSW and turn in as people that back the team. Is there anyone else there on board that people need to know about?
Yeah, we've got Prestige Sim Photography on there as well. So photos and bits and pieces certainly head their way, and then again another one from the karting world, but racing is custom use protection. Aaron, which is actually Hayden Sill's mum. Done a lot of stuff at the go kart track with them and mentoring Hayden and whatnot. But so they've got that business as well. So they're really the legacy sponsors, so to speak, of the team. And if you ever need anything, head to our socials and check out the links.
Perfect, mate. It's been awesome. Thanks again. Looking forward to the next time we get to do it.
No worries, mate. Thank you.
And that is it for episode 1 of the Sim Racing in Focus podcast. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I hope you enjoyed the style of the podcast, and you can come back again and listen to it again next week. Don't forget, if you do enjoy the show, you want to be reminded, you can jump online to the simracinginfocus.blog website, subscribe to the email. You'll be sent out the new episodes in each email each week, or just follow along on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Everything will be linked in the show notes. So, appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully, we'll see you again next week, and looking forward to our next guest and what they've got to contribute. So, that's pretty much it from me tonight. Bye for now.